Welcome into the ESPNFC YouTube channel in the aftermath of some pretty big games at the Women's World Cup down in Australia and New Zealand, and we're here to break them all down. I'm Sebastian Salazar, thrilled to be joined by a couple of my colleagues here, Marissa Lordanic and Sam Marsden. Sam is in Wellington, Marissa's in Brisbane. I hope I got that right. Great to have you guys with us. The game that just wrapped up, the one we just saw, England beating Haiti 1-0. Georgia Stanway with the only goal in the match, a penalty in the 29th minute. Sam, I'll start with you. What'd you make of the Three Lionesses' performance?
I mean, it's a winning start, but it was a slow start. I don't think it was perhaps the performance they would have liked. I think they would have liked to win more comfortably. Obviously, the only goal they scored came from a penalty, which is an increasing theme at this World Cup, a penalty given in every match now. I think we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, probably an underwhelming performance from the English side, who I think the big talking point before the tournament has been whether they have that sort of ability in the final third to score a lot of goals. And perhaps the answer so far from that first game is that is an area that's going to need work in the tournament. But I think that's perhaps you have to give a lot of credit to Haiti as well. I mean, it was a great start for them. They were really, really impressive, especially Mathilde Monet, the young 19-year-old who's about to sign for Lyon or has signed for Lyon. She was really good. She was really impressive. But yeah, it's 3 points for England and they move on. Obviously, one of the favourites for the tournament. Hopefully, they will benefit from getting that first game out of the way and of course getting 3 points.
Marissa, disappointing scoreline. Was it a disappointing performance?
I think for the Lionesses, they will be disappointed in the performance, but it is tournament football. So a win's a win. They've got 3 points. They've got a clean sheet. They'll be delighted with that, but I don't think it's the way they will want to play this World Cup. And I don't think it's the kind of performance that will get them, winning this World Cup, which is ultimately the aim. But if we're talking about Haiti's performance, definitely not a disappointment, even though they won't love that result. They were absolutely phenomenal and I reckon have surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a chance to get a good look at them up close and personal in the CONCACAF W Championship here in this side of the world. And they put in some impressive performances. They beat Mexico badly in Mexico to kind of get that last ticket into the Intercontinental playoffs. So for some of us, Haiti playing England tight wasn't that much of a surprise. One of the things that was a surprise to me about the starting 11 from Sarina Wiegman was the decision to go with Alicia Russo up top. There are, of course, other options. Rachel Daly, I think, started the last game for England before the tournament began. Sam, what do you think of Russo's performance and the decision that we see her in the starting 11? Because we know from the European Championships, once Sarina Wiegman picks a lineup, she tends to stick to it.
Yeah, that's true. She doesn't like to change the formula too much or tinker too much. I think that was one of the, like you said, that was one of the big decisions that she had to make. And I think whether she went with obviously Rachel Daly, who's had a fantastic season for Aston Villa, the top scorer in the Women's Super League. I think that, Russo didn't do a lot wrong. She certainly wasn't one of England's sort of weaker performers, I don't think. But I think perhaps it could be something that we do see rotated. I thought the wide players were quite good, Hemp and Chloe Kelly, but there wasn't, it wasn't a brilliant performance from Russo without doing a lot wrong. And Rachel Daly came on. She almost scored late on, a nice little header from across. Maybe we'll see some minutes for Daly in one of these next two games, and perhaps with these two competing for a place in perhaps the side in the knockout rounds if England are to progress. I'm not 100% convinced that Russo is, even though, like we say, Wiegman didn't like to make many changes during the Euros. Obviously, Ellen White was the number 9 then. We'll see how she goes with this. I'd like to see more of Rachel Daly personally.
Marissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I would like to see Daly start, to be honest, based solely on that WSL form. It was absolutely electric. And I think even if you took out the names and you found out that league's top scorer wasn't the starting number 9 for her country, it sounds like a weird thing without putting in the details. I'd also just like to see her start because we know what Alessia Russo does off the bench. That was the formula during the Euros and it worked to great effect. So I think even if it's maybe not so much about Russo starting, but knowing what she does off the bench, I would like to see that. And if Daly or even a Beth England has to be the starting player for the Lionesses to ensure that then Russo can come off the bench and do what she does, I would like to see that.
Sam, you hinted at it earlier in the show about the penalties that we've seen throughout the World Cup so far. I understand you got a piece coming on ESPN.com about it.
Yeah, so there's been a penalty in every game so far at the World Cup. We were just about saved by Japan, Zambia earlier with a penalty, and I think it was by the time it was scored, it was like the 101st minute of the game. That was almost the first game without a penalty. But I think that's 9 games. I've lost count with this England game now because I was doing the numbers before the England game. I think we're up to 9 games and 9 penalties. So we're averaging a penalty a game. I had some of the numbers sent over me to do the piece. At the last World Cup in 2019, there were 26 penalties from 52 games, so 0.5. And that was the sort of highest average there's ever been of penalties per game, 0.5. In the World Cup in 2011, there were only 4 penalties, according to the numbers I've got here, sent by ESPN. So I'm hoping they're accurate. I'll check them out in a bit. But yeah, I guess it's in part to do with, the fact that we've now got VAR at this World Cup, and, the fact that the referees can review these decisions. A lot of the penalties weren't given on the pitch and have been given upon review. So that's playing a major reason in the increase in penalties. And we've got Denmark coming up now against China. No idea what time, where in the world, but it's soon. And yeah, there's pressure on them now for one of them to commit a penalty or to give a penalty away so that we can keep up this stats for the end of the day.
Marissa, what do you make of the rash of penalties? And beyond that, what we're seeing something new for the first time here is when there's a VAR explanation, we're kind of hearing it straight in the stadium from the referees, the officials themselves. Marissa?
Sorry, I think my computer went a bit AWOL then. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to follow up and ask you about what you made of the rash of penalties, and beyond that, what we're seeing with some of the VAR reviews where we get announcements live in stadium, which is the first.
Yeah, I think it's when we first heard that there was going to be these announcements, everyone kind of hoped that maybe this would be the thing that makes VAR more palatable to people. I think it has succeeded in some way. There's definitely, I suppose, for people in the stands, knowing what's actually going on is definitely an improvement on past kind of VAR experiences. But I still think there are some tweaks that need to be made just in terms of fully explaining what's going on. Because, you check social media and there are still people who, even though we can all hear that the penalty has been given because we've heard it straight out of the mouth of the referee, we still don't exactly know why. And I think that's the more important part of the VAR announcement. So I'm hoping that maybe eventually we will get to a point where VAR is completely palatable, but I'm still not 100% sold.
Yeah, you and the rest of us. So England 1-0 winners over Haiti, worth mentioning. Japan 5-0 winners over Zambia as well this morning. All right, Marissa, great to have you with us. We got to let you go, but thanks for joining us here on the ESPNFC YouTube channel.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so from Marissa, we'll welcome in Sophie Lawson. Sophie's been covering all things World Cup. I think you were based out of Auckland. Where are you now, Sophie?
And at about 180 seconds into China-Denmark, no penalties yet.
Okay, good. James, you don't have to update your lead. Not yet anyway on the article. So a good opportunity for us here to talk about some of the big picture stories across the World Cup so far. I think the biggest story when it comes to Australia has to be Sam Kerr and the calf injury that she picked up the day before the tournament kicked off. It cost her the opener, Sophie. It looks like it's going to cost her at least the next game as well. Can you describe not just the impact on the Australian team, but really the impact on the buzz around this tournament? Because she was really one of the central figures when you heard about all the excitement in Australia.
I think it's a massive blow. As you say, she's captain. A lot of the buzz has been around her, and as such, a lot of the reporting since her opening game has been about her injury. That she's not there. What does it mean for the Tillies? But I think they've had a couple of games without her. When she wasn't available, they're trying some stuff out. They're finding ways to win without her. The problem is they like to play a certain way that feeds her or allows her to create space for her teammates. So it's not just losing a goal scorer. We know she's one of the best players in the world, but she's really vastly matured over the last couple of years into that captaincy role. So she's just such a talismanic figure, but she kind of calms everything down, and she's a good player for everyone on the pitch to look to and think, right, Sam's here. We're okay now. Sam's here, because she just kind of brings everything together. And I think there are certain teams you can look across and they have that type of player, and they do struggle when they're without. So we just have to see how she copes with this injury, how serious it is, and hopefully she'll be back before too long and can actually take part in this, because obviously she's been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah. Australia 1-0 winners in their opener over Ireland without Sam Kerr. They got the 3 points in the opener. How far they can go is kind of a different story. Sam Marsden, not Sam Kerr. What do you think it would mean for Australia's tournament if Kerr can't come back, or if she can't be the player that we know her to be?
Yeah, obviously it's massive. I think we did the ESPN ranking of the best players at the tournament, and she was obviously number one. And it's not just the fact she's the number one; it's the fact that Australia are one of the two host nations as well, and everything she sort of symbolises. I mean, I'm aware of obviously how good she's been for Chelsea. I wasn't quite aware of until I'm not in Australia. I'm in New Zealand, but reading stuff and speaking to people around of how big she sort of is, just in terms of sport in general in Australia and the figure that she represents here. So beyond any playing level, to not have her as a part of this World Cup would be huge. I mean, I guess she will still be a part of it in the fact that she's still with the squad at the moment and speaking and whatnot, but not have her on the pitch would be massive. And yeah, obviously Australia's results have been very good. They're hosts, they're one of the favourites, and that is because they have got perhaps the world's most sort of deadly forward or most impressive player in front of goal. So if she doesn't play when, in tight games, and sometimes people can try and make sort of arguments for why perhaps, other players can blossom without the best player, why, perhaps other players playing with certain players in certain teams at certain points in history, play perhaps within themselves if they're sort of playing with such a big star and there's that tendency to want to give them the ball. But I don't think that's the case with Kerr, and obviously a player of her sort of quality you need in the team, especially as the host nation, and the impact she has in the final third.
Sam, before we let you go, I got to ask, because right now you look pretty cozy in your hotel room. You got the hoodie on. I've seen some images of our colleagues. I won't name names. Alexis Nunes, who's going to join us in just a little bit, in like full jacket gear. How cold actually is it there? Because, we think of a World Cup, we think of a summer tournament, but some of the images on television are painting a vastly different picture.
Yeah, so it's cold and windy here in Wellington. I don't know what it's like in Auckland. Apparently, people tell me here that it's especially cold and windy in Wellington. It's sort of known for that. Before I came, one of the local journalists told me that the stadium where they're playing the games here at Wellington Regional Stadium can be like Stoke on a Tuesday night. And it was very, very cold and wet last night. I don't know if anyone saw the Spain game, but It was blowing an absolute gale. Afterwards, I was trying to film just like a 30-second segment outside the ground, and it was just proving impossible with the rain and the wind and stuff. So yeah, it's been. I mean, I probably have a different gauge as someone who grew up in England to Alexis. And I know Alexis lives in London now, but I think her weather gauge is different to mine. It's a bit more like a kind of like an English autumn than an English winter. It's not quite sort of, zero temperatures or whatnot, but it is wet and windy.
Sam, one more thing before we let you go. Just looking ahead to tomorrow's games, we got Sweden, South Africa, Netherlands, Portugal, France, Jamaica. Of the teams that we're going to see tomorrow, who do you think has the best shot to win the tournament?
I'm going to lean just towards the game because I'm going to one and I'm going to see Sweden. I don't know if out of those teams, but I think they do have a chance. Obviously, they were obviously silver medalists in the Olympic Games in Tokyo. They were semi-finalists at the last World Cup. They have some really, really good players. It feels like they perhaps sort of the nearly team and always get quite close without actually doing anything. And I'm not sure if they will win it, but I like a lot of their players. I really like Fridolina Rolfo, who plays for Barcelona. She plays left back for Barcelona, but she is a winger, she is a forward, and she'll be really important. But they've got so many good players who play at some of Europe's best sides. And there's sort of obviously before the tournament, teams always not talk themselves up, but there's sort of, you don't get so much of the negative stuff coming out until perhaps afterwards. But at their press conferences today, they felt sort of relaxed, and they spoke about feeling like they really have an identity and they have the right mentality to go far in this tournament. And they sort of suggesting that they've not always had that. Magdalena Eriksson, the defender who's just left Chelsea for Bayern Munich, saying that when Sweden are at their best, it's when they have a clear identity, and she feels that they do have that and they're ready to go far in the tournament. So we'll see.
Sam Marsden, great stuff. You can just work over to ESPN.com. Appreciate the time. We let Sam go. Sophie, I'll ask you the same question about the weather. Have you noticed it impacting games at all? It's funny Sam mentioned it. The one game that it really came across on television was Spain, Costa Rica. You could see the players fighting against it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean that was the wet one. It was actually after the opener in Auckland. The rain sort of stayed back until after the game, and then we all got pelted. But so far, no, it's just a bit cold. It's just a bit windy. The games I've seen, and yeah, it's kind of just like being in England in October, November. It's just a little brisk. There were loads of American journalists at the opener as well. I was seeing big fuzzy hats, big coats, gloves, and they were still shivering. And I was just there in my coat. So I'm not going to say anything about it. Yeah, it's been a little nippy, and it's a little hard to reconcile as well, because you think, it's summer, it should be hot, but of course, Southern Hemisphere.
Exactly. We got to bring her in to defend herself. Alexis Nunes, who I called out for her gear on some of our recent television hits, because I see her suffering out there, and we were in Qatar for the World Cup. It was quite nice. Did you not pack correctly, or what happened, Alexis? Because you seem to not be ready the most out of anybody for what the weather's like down there.
Sammy, I asked everyone, how cold does it get in Australia and New Zealand in winter? And Aussies, Kiwis, and English people told me, you'll be fine. It's kind of like spring in England. I've been living in London for 4 years now. You'll be okay. I am not okay, Sebi. I've had to buy thermals. I've had to buy 2 extra coats. But I would also like to remember that I am from a beautiful Caribbean island by the name of Jamaica, where it is sunshine and warmth all the time. I'm not from places like England where all sorts of cold and warm, just any sort of warmth goes to die there, or from the Midwest in the US. Okay, so I don't operate at 10 degrees. 20 degrees is not hot for me. 25 degrees up, now we're talking. So I'm cold, I'm not okay, and I'm breaking out the gloves and the hand warmers tomorrow.
Excellent. Well, I know you've been cold on your coverage of the U.S. women's national team. You've been following them around. Get your thoughts on the U.S. and their victory over Vietnam in just a second. But as we were talking with Sam Marsden, there's a good slate of games tomorrow, and it includes the country you just mentioned, Alexis, Jamaica taking on France. We were going to have a piece prepared for you to tell us a little bit about why you think Jamaica has a shot against France, but I'll just give you the floor now. Why does Jamaica have a shot against France?
Honestly, Sammy, I genuinely don't think we do. I think, trying to be a good journalist, I don't think we do. But we can talk about the usual things that we tell ourselves in football, that football is played on the day. This is tournament football. We don't have to play the prettiest game. We don't have to dominate France. You just get a cheeky goal here and there, maybe lock up shop and hope for the best. And at the end of the day, though, I think Jamaica has gone from being the darlings of the World Cup, which happened last time that we went, with a relatively new squad, a young squad, a lot of players who were just coming out of their college years in the US, where they had gone to further their careers as well. And a lot of those players have matured, and since then we have seen the rise of certain players. For example, Khadija Shaw, who's been doing absolutely brilliant stuff at Manchester City, not just for a level of being a Jamaican baller, but just, I think, as a footballer overall in the world. She scored over 30 goals now in the WSL. She's on everybody's radar. We've got a couple other players too that I've mentioned. Alison Swaby, who of course plays for Jamaica, but is actually a native of Hartford, Connecticut. Imagine that. And since the last World Cup, she's been able to go to Europe to play there. She's had a great stint at Roma before going back to playing the NWSL. So I think that this is a much, I suppose, more mature Reggae Girls squad, different mindset, not just happy to be here, happy for the opportunities. I think they're ready. They've learned from mistakes of old, not trying to get ahead of ourselves or anything, because it is still the toughest group, But I think overall, they're definitely here to compete, and they've definitely learned over the last 4 years.
Sophie, Jamaica, or anybody else you're looking forward to seeing tomorrow?
I'm personally going to be at Netherlands, Portugal, so I hope I'm looking forward to that. I think Jamaica. I think maybe Alexis is actually underselling them a bit. We know what Bunny Shaw can do. We know how diverse that squad is, as she said. So many of those players have come through like sort of the American collegiate system. They've got sort of a real range of experience now. Yes, France would be a tough ask, but France themselves missing some key players. They're very new under their coach. So I don't think this is the strongest France team. So that's a good shot for Jamaica. I think South Africa could have some fun in the group they're in. We spoke a little bit about Sweden, as Sam did. They are a fun team. They have an identity. Netherlands are a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. Portugal are making their debut. I think everyone has a chance, and I kind of feel that way about the entire 32 teams. Everyone has a chance to show some good football, to score some goals, or to make some penalty saves. So yeah, always just looking forward to it and hoping that I can stay awake.
Me
That's
too.
the truth. Bunny Shaw averaging more than a goal a game across all comps for Manchester City this past season. All right, let's talk about the U.S.-Vietnam game from last night. U.S. winning 3-0, scored a couple goals in the first half, courtesy Sophia Smith. Lindsey Horan adding a goal in the 77th minute to make it 3-0. Alexis, I think it wasn't the scoreline that a lot of American fans would have expected. What was the team's reaction to their performance after the game?
I think, Sammy, throughout all the post-match hits that I've been doing today, I think I just kind of summed it up as the result that the U.S. wanted, but not the performance that they wanted. And that's exactly, I think, what the players were telling me after I got to speak to the likes of Sophia Smith as well, Megan Rapinoe, who's quite honest in her assessments of the game, Lindsey Horan as well, and Rose Lavelle. And all of them kind of just echoed that statement, the fact that they were not as clinical in the final third as they know they can be. You looked at the stats and it was 29 shots at goal, only 7 of them on target. They ended up with, I say, just the 3 goals. We have to remember that the USA in women's football are pretty much victims of their own success. And when you see them go up against a team like Vietnam, you do expect to blow them out of the water. But that just wasn't the case today. You had Megan Rapinoe missing an absolute sitter, Alex Morgan missing a penalty. Lindsey Horan afterwards, she said she was happy that she got her goal. She got emotional after, but then she said she felt kind of embarrassed doing the interview now because she knew she probably should have scored 2 or 3 more. And especially as captain, you're going to want to put that performance out there. So it is one, because you look at the opposition and you say it's only going to get harder now when they go up against the Netherlands. So you want to put out a big show when Vietnam, of course, they were really frustrating defensively and were doing everything they could to hold the US back. But when you see those names in that starting 11 on the pitch and that firepower and star power, you expect them to take a lot more than 7 of those 29 chances at goal. So in the end, you can look at it as being tournament football. They got the 3 points. They got their first win. A lot of debutants got their first taste of a win at a World Cup so they can move on. But you're going to be wondering that in the next games to come, there's not going to be that much margin for error.
I have to say I was kind of surprised at the starting lineup from Vlatko Ananovsky. 2 things in particular. Savannah DeMello getting the start there in midfield, just because we haven't seen a whole lot of her. And then even though we had been told we might see Julie Ertz in a center back role, I think we'd mostly thought we'd see her kind of in a defensive midfield role. And then she gets the first start of the World Cup at right center back. Sophie, what did you make of the lineup and then the U.S. performance?
Well, my galaxy brain idea about this, and I haven't been in the US presses. I don't know if Vlatko's spoken to it, but my thought was I've been really excited about Naomi Girma. I think she's been great this season. She's been great when she's played for the US, but bringing her into this World Cup and having her not next to Becky Sauerbrunn, I think Brune would just kind of calm her down, settle her in. Not having that, I think my idea, at least, is having Ertz next to her. Again, a very different player from Brune, but a player with experience, a player who's been there and done it, and maybe on a subconscious level, calming her down, settling her into the tournament. I don't know. That's just an idea. I don't love Ertz centre back. I don't think anyone does, really, if we're being honest. We know that she's best in midfield. It was a good run out for DeMello. Thought Lavelle, when she came on, looked great. When Pino came on, she looked really rusty. So there are 2 sides of the coin. But I think Kim Tan in the Vietnamese goal had a great game. I thought Vietnam really did what they could to dampen stuff for the US. But overall, I don't know, I think maybe, yes, this could be a surprise result or performance for US fans. This feels quite consistent with what we've seen from the US in the last year or so, that yes, they can dominate, but they don't take their chances. Maybe it's about individual talents rather than having a good cohesive team. So I don't know if they can continue to build through this tournament, but look, they've started it off. They've got 3 points, kept a clean sheet, scored some goals, and that's how you start to build and move forward, even if you're not blowing teams out of the water.
Alexis, what's the crowd support like for the U.S.? Because obviously New Zealand is a long way from the United States of America. But beyond that, with the women's national team, if you go early in the tournament, you might miss the good part. So imagine there's some people who are planning to come maybe knockout round, quarterfinals, semifinals. Were there a lot of American fans there?
Yeah, absolutely, Sebi. Honestly, I would say it was almost equal because Vietnam, obviously being a lot of the Asian countries tend to be closer to this side of the world. So I knew that Vietnam probably would travel well. And there's just a lot of Vietnamese actually living in New Zealand. But the U.S. women's national team do have a really strong support system, and they do travel. Our hotel where we are is pretty much 80% U.S. women's national team supporters. We see them every morning at breakfast. You know, they get excited when they find out ESPN is here. And the stadium too was packed. You know, it was over 40,000 fans that filled Eden Park. And what I noticed as well, because to get to our media tribune, we had to kind of cut through some of the regular stands with the fans. And there were a lot of native Kiwis who were just dressed up in U.S. colors to come out and see them, because when you have names like Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe out there, Kelly O'Hara, you're going to want to see them. And I know we've spoken about it as well on Football Americas and FC, how the base where the U.S. women's national team have been, especially their training ground at Bay City Park, everyone has kind of rallied around them. There's a veterinary clinic right beside it, and they had a banner printed that says, "We at the Bay City Veterinary Clinic want to wish the U.S. women's national team good luck at this World Cup. We hope it's going to be USA versus New Zealand in the final." And, you know, just kind of buoying them on. It's amazing. Look, we know the influence, and we know this, I suppose, the star power the USA has. We know what they have done for the game on and off the pitch. And I think everybody really realizes that no matter where they go in the world, people just want to be near that. And I think that's something that we definitely saw today.
Sophie, we haven't seen the Netherlands yet, but based on what we saw from the United States, how worried should all those fans that Alexis is talking about be for that second game for this American team?
Oh boy, not in that sense. So I think people are thinking the Netherlands, if you go back 4 years, they got to the final. This is a very different Dutch team. They've got a new coach under Andries Jonker, who is quite new to this level as well. He's been an assistant around a lot of big teams, but not the head guy. They're without Viviana Miedema. We know she's so important for them for their goals. You know, Lika Martins, again, probably about the second most important player, has been injured on and off throughout the season. So then we've also got a lot of young players coming through, and it's not. It feels quite soon for them. Not everything's kind of in place and embedded properly. I think you've got seeds in the ground, but not flowers sprouting yet. So I don't think this is the Dutch at their best. But we know if they get a hold of the ball, they can be quite stubborn with it. So I think we've got to wait a few hours, see what they're like against Portugal, just get a feel for what they're like this tournament, and then that, I think, will give sort of American fans a better idea of what they could be facing. But I think overall, this is probably a good group for the US to progress from and just to find their own footing in it.
Alexis, can't let you go without asking about the Sophia Smith experience live. A first half brace. What was it like in person?
Listen, Sophia Smith told us that she came here to ball out. And that's exactly what she did. I mean, we've been talking all week about the confidence that she has, that it's almost like a Zlatan, but minus a little hints of arrogance. She's just confident in herself. She's confident in her form, and she knows exactly what she came here to do. And we saw that. I mean, that first goal, great little backheel kind of flick, which turned out to be the assist from Alex Morgan. But amazing finishing from Sophia Smith. Just the absolute composure that she has at this level. It almost makes you want to laugh at all the questions that she's been fielding in the last couple of weeks in the lead up to this World Cup, wondering if she and the rest of these debutantes are ready to play on this stage, if their head's in the right place, if they're going to let the occasion get the better of them, if they're feeling pressure of delivering this three-peat. And she said, no, pressure is all I know. I came here to ball out. I came here to score goals. I always have wanted to score goals. She's like, I will dribble it straight from the goal right up the pitch to walk it in the net if I have to. And I think she showed that today. And it was amazing to see how many Sophia Smith shirts there were in the crowd today. A lot of people had a lot of the signs for her when they were reading. Naturally, some of the biggest cheers come for Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, but Sophia Smith got the biggest cheer, I think, of the rest of the squad, especially when they were reading out the starting 11. She definitely has a lot of fans. She definitely has caught a lot of eyes, and you can see why today. I mean, already 2 goals in her World Cup debut. She's become the youngest player in U.S. history to score multiple goals on debut. No, my girl said she's here to ball out. And she came to ball out. So I cannot wait to see her in this match against the Netherlands, even though everything Sophie said is so true. It's probably not the Netherlands that we're expecting, but this has still not been the US that we're expecting. So it'll be interesting to see her up against what should be not a bit more, but definitely more of a challenge than Vietnam was today.
Alexis, Sophie, great stuff. As always, a pleasure to be with you. Our coverage of the Women's World Cup will continue here on the ESPNFC YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us.